What's up, J Fusion fans, and welcome back to another vlog. Now, it's been a very, very long time since I last had an anime related video, so now we are going to talk about Vinland Saga's main character, Thorfinn Karlsefni. Now, you may know already that Vinland Saga is actually inspired by actual Viking records that dates back to around the 12th century AD, and it is actually a combination of several records such as Eric the Red Saga and the Greenlanders Saga, and altogether they form the so-called Vinland Saga stories. And one of the people mentioned in those sagas is Thorfinn Karlsefni, who is, of course, the main protagonist of the anime Vinland Saga. And I know there is a manga out there. So, anyways, this video is going to be all about Thorfinn, and this is rather a comparison between the anime version and the actual Thorfinn Karlsefni, which is very interesting. Like, I did some research and I found out some really interesting things about the real life Thorfinn Karlsefni that sets him apart from the Thorfinn that's featured in the manga and anime. So here we go. Now, we know that the Thorfinn is the son of Thor's. Now, this is actually not the correct way to pronounce his father's name. It's originally Thorð or Thorður if you would actually like to follow the Icelandic pronunciation. Although I do understand that changing his name to Thors would be much easier for the Japanese voice actors to pronounce his name, and I get it. It's a translation difference. But anyway, Thorfinn's father, Thordur Snorrason, is actually a very interesting individual considering his lineage. Now, well, there may not be very clear records about Thordur Snorrason. I did check out some sources. Now, I do understand that Wikipedia isn't the best source out there, but what's interesting is that they've added a family tree to Thorfinn Karlsefni's line, and his father's side actually traces his ancestry back to the semi-legendary Viking Ragnar Lothbrok. Now, we know that Ragnar Lothbrok himself may be a questionable individual as to whether he actually existed or not. So whether he's an actual person, a completely fictional person, or a fictional person based on a real person, or an amalgamation of several real people, that is still up to debate until this day. However, his mother, Thorun, has no record whatsoever, so Thorun may have been just an ordinary Nordic woman. However, in the manga and anime, Thorfinn's mother is named Helga and not Thorun, and while Thord or Thorður plays an important role despite dying off, being killed off very early, his impact still remains even long after his death. So Thordur is still a very important character. But again, going back to Helga, her lineage actually connects her to royalty. Now, her father Sigvaldi is actually the leader of Scania, which is actually modern day Skåne in Sweden. Although back in the day it was a Danish territory, so we can consider Sigvaldi as a Danish man. We can consider Helga as Danish, although as for Thorvir, his origins are not specified in the anime, although his real life counterpart may have been Norwegian, if I read that correctly. So, yes, Thorfinn's mother's side is actually connected to royalty. Now, Sigvaldi is actually a jarl or a petty king or a minor king of Scania, but he is also the leader of the Jomsvikings, or as I would like to call them, the Jomsviking, which is actually a bit closer to how modern Scandinavians would pronounce it. I just like the sound of Jomsviking better. So anyway, so Sigvaldi is the leader of Scania, and Jomsborg, which is the stronghold of the Jomsvikings, or Jomsvikingar, or Jomsvikingen, if the Scandinavian pronunciation were to be followed. So anyway, he is like the chieftain, and it makes sense for Sigvaldi to marry off his daughter to who probably is the best Jomsviking at that time, who was likely Thorvir. And Sigvaldi also has a brother, maybe a younger brother, who is actually part of the Jomsviking, and he's also a very famous Viking in real life and is also featured in the Vinland Saga manga and anime. And this specific Viking or Jomsviking is actually Thorkel the Tall. Thorkel the Tall is easy to recognize because he is a giant, and that is probably based on the actual Viking sagas and other historical records that depict Thorkel as a gigantic man. And this makes Thorkel Helga's uncle, and therefore he is Thorfinn's grand uncle by virtue of Thorkel being the brother of Sigvaldi. And what's more interesting about this one is that Sigvaldi and Thorkel are sons of the Jarl Strut-Harald, and Strut-Harald is said to be the brother of King Harald Bluetooth. So Harald the Bluetooth is the Danish king who gave us the word Bluetooth. So if you have Bluetooth on your phone, then yeah, you have that Danish king to thank for. And one of Harald Bluetooth's sons is Sweyn Forkbeard, which is also a prominent character in the Vinland Saga anime. And in the Vinland Saga anime, he's always depicted as a shadowed figure. His face is always covered in shadow. We do see him appear, but his face is always covered. We never see his eyes, we never see his full face, but nonetheless, he exists. And of course, we know that Sweyn Forkbeard is the father of King Canute, who also plays a major role in this anime/manga. And by virtue of their relationship, this makes King Canute, despite being the same age as Thorfinn, he is Thorfinn's uncle. So that was a very interesting thing to find out when I did my research on the family and the lineage of Thorfinn and how he relates to royalty. And speaking of Thorfinn and royalty, the real life Thorfinn Karlsefni may have been connected to an Irish king. So going back to his father, Thord. I believe one of Thorfinn's great grandparents was an Irish king. I forgot the name, but yeah, it's possible that this Irish king had a daughter, and this daughter married a Viking, or maybe someone of a Nordic descent, and then from that line we get Thorder and of course Thorfinn. Now, it's very interesting to see, how Thorfinn is related to these royalties. Of course, in the anime, we do not yet explicitly see the connections. So Thorkel, however, knows that he probably knows that he's related to Thorfinn. He knows Helga, although he does not say anything, about them actually being related, and such. He just knew about Thorfinn. He knows about Thorder, because of Thorder's reputation as being a very strong man, and we do see Thorder as a giant with an imposing height. Well, Thorkel may have been slightly taller than Thorder, but Thorkel says that Thorder is the best Jomsviking there is, and is the only one who could probably defeat Thorkel in single combat. So there's that reputation. So at least Thorkel knows of Thorfinn through his father, and who knows, maybe probably in future chapters they would eventually be revealed as, like grand uncle and grand nephew. So when that happens, if that happens, it would be interesting how their relationship and how events would play out, given this revelation, if again, if this is ever to be revealed, and how it may also affect the relationship of Canute and Thorfinn. Again, in the anime at least, in the anime and manga at least, they are blood related. So it may also be interesting to find out what would happen with their interactions, because as of this point in the anime, Thorfinn and Canute have already met each other. In fact, some maybe some spoilers for Vinland Saga about episodes 11 to 13. So Thorfinn is assigned as Canute's bodyguard. So again, it's interesting to see Canute interacting with Thorfinn, because they were the only people of the same age depicted, at least within their group. So Canute is surrounded by Ashalad's men. They are assigned to protect him, with Thorfinn as the one assigned to be Canute's actual personal bodyguard. But like as shown in the anime and manga, all of Ashalad's men are probably much older than they are. Much older than Thorfinn, very much older than Canute. So they are the only youngsters, so to say, in those scenes, and their interaction as young men of opposite upbringings was really interesting to look at, and it was interesting to watch. So again, being blood related, again, if this is ever to be revealed, it may be interesting to see how their relationship changes over time. So another thing about the real life Thorfinn Karlsefni is that he is depicted more as an explorer and merchant, whereas the anime paints him as more of a warrior. I know this may have been done to make Thorfinn's character more exciting, but even so, the statue of Thorfinn Karlsefni that exists in Reykjavik, Iceland, although there also used to be another copy of the same statue in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, but unfortunately, in October of 2018, so about a year ago, it was unfortunately destroyed by some vandals who were in some sort of protest. They beheaded the statue and threw its entire body onto the nearby river. So, unfortunately, that's so sad to learn about. So, yeah, the only statue that remains of Thorfinn is in Reykjavik. So, these statues that were created by Einar Jonsson in 1920 depict Thorfinn with a Viking axe and a sword, and also a shield strapped to his back. Whereas in the anime, he wields his father's dagger, and then he gains a second dagger by grabbing it off an English soldier and using it to kill him, and has kept it ever since. So Thorfinn is shown to be a master of close quarter combat. Now, it may not be the same as the real life Thorfinn, but it's also presumable that the real life Thorfinn was trained in combat as well, because during his adventures to the new land, his adventures to Vinland, which may be either Newfoundland or Nova Scotia in Canada. So when they landed there, of course, they were under the threat of the natives who weren't so welcoming to their arrival. So there were actual records of clashes between the Vikings and the natives of Vinland, and of course, casualties were inevitable. So, in order to defend himself and his wife Guthrid, who will also appear later in the anime and manga, she also appears to be an important character in Thorfinn's life in general, as she is recorded to have accompanied Thorfinn to Vinland. So, in order to protect his wife, in order to protect his men, Thorfinn may have also been trained in combat, which is why he is depicted as a warrior in his statues by Einar Jonsson. So, the sword and axe and shield make good sense, but maybe he had a dagger somewhere. I don't know. Although whether this dagger was from his father, we never know for sure. But that's Thorfinn Karlsefni. So I'm actually very glad to have made research on Thorfinn. There are a lot of links out there on the internet. I also watched a ton of YouTube videos about Vikings and their adventures to Vinland, and even some videos about Thorfinn, the real life Thorfinn Karlsefni, and his journey to Vinland. Although the real life Thorfinn, well, his adventures in Vinland didn't end so well. Like, upon landing in Vinland, he is said to have stayed there for only 2 months, and after that he went back to Greenland after a failed expedition, and then went back to Iceland to live out the rest of his days. So it hopefully the manga and anime gives him a better ending. Although, of course, this is historically inaccurate, but it wouldn't hurt to give him a much happier ending. Succeeding in building a new life in the promised land of wine. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I know this is imperfect with the research I made, but it was really fun. Like, the researching part was really fun. I don't have exact links to Thorfinn Karlsefni. You can Google them yourself, really, but or you can also watch a ton of Viking documentaries out there. There are lots of videos available about Vikings, about Vinland, and you might even find some about Thorfinn. So you can go check them out yourself. But again, making this video is really fun for me. So I hope you guys enjoyed watching this. Please do leave a like, comment, and subscribe. And don't forget that notification bell so you get the latest from JE Fusion. This has been Philip. Thanks for watching again, and I'll see you on the next video. Bye!